Are we actually going yet or not? And I don't think so. Yeah, we are. We're on there. Okay, perfect. So let me go ahead and post this. All right. So now that we know that we got this going on and we got that going on, perfect. All right. So today I am with Kristen. She is a seasoned hiring manager and she knows her stuff when it comes to getting people in roles and what it really takes in order to be successful in this field and what it takes to actually be hired by a company. So I'm very thankful for you for taking this time to actually be with me today. I genuinely appreciate that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and some of the things that you've done and what you're really skilled at?
Sure. So I am a career recruiter, about 20 years in the field. Started off in Virginia doing some Department of Defense hiring and moved all over the place to Wichita and Oklahoma City and ended up in Memphis. But recruiting has been a great lifeline throughout that whole thing because I can do it from wherever I am. But I've had a great time recruiting lots of different industries, all the way from kind of general light industrial all the way up to airplane mechanics, pilots, IT professionals, enterprise architects, C-level professionals. So I've had a very broad experience.
So one of the first questions I do want to ask you is when you come across, let's say, a resume, what are like the key things that you're looking for right away to identify whether you need to spend any more time looking at this candidate or should you move on to somebody else?
That's a really good, easy question. Does it make sense? And are there a ton of errors? If you have a ton of errors in your resume or on your LinkedIn profile, that's a document that you really should be taking time with. And if you're not, that just signals to me that maybe this isn't the right time for you to be looking for a job. Maybe you have other things going on. You're not as focused on what you need to be focused on. So just that it makes sense and that it's grammatically correct as much as it can be. I mean, I know when you're stringing together lots of lines of acronyms, grammar is not always easy, but if it looks like someone took the time, that makes me want to take the time.
Sure. So we were having a debate on the subject the other day, so I plan on asking every guest that comes on the show this. But as far as putting percentages or like in XYZ language, I know 70%. Would you advise or would you say don't do that?
It depends. That could be a yes or a no. If you are talking about GPA or a project that you didn't finish completely or something that isn't something you want to publicize, I would steer away from that. But if you're saying I grew our revenue by 2.5% year over year, those are definitely the numbers you want to use, action kind of numbers.
Absolutely agree with that. One thing that's been a trend as of late in the tech sector is to show your proficiency in a language by using an arbitrary number that doesn't really mean something. So some people will put like, oh, I know 70% of JavaScript. And there's no metric or test to verify that. So they're just choosing an arbitrary number out of the sky. So I'd like to get input on that. Like, should they be doing that? Should they not be doing that? Is it hurting them or helping them? And so that's the reason why I asked that question.
Well, when you're thinking about resumes, you got to think about who's reading them. You've got visual people and you've got people who are not visual or who are more data analytic. So a nice little chart, if you have room, that shows where you're proficient in your skills, expert level.
Would it be more advisable? Okay. I was going to say, would it be more advisable just to list out the languages that you know, and then perhaps they would give you an exam when you start or an assessment or something like that? Or would you think it should be advisable to say, hey, I'm very weak in this. maybe you should disregard this?
I don't know if I would say I'm weak in it. I know, especially with you, you're always learning and you're always expanding your horizons and your knowledge. So there might be some technologies that you are weak in right now, admittedly, because you're learning. So, to say I'm an expert at X, Y, Z, and Q, but I'm also training to become an expert in P, Q, and D, that might be okay. But to say, I have 70% experience with Excel, I have 100% with Microsoft Word, I have 20 with Access, it just kind of seems like it's information that you don't, like, you want to make yourself as shiny, sparkly, pretty as possible. So I wouldn't throw in any information that's not building you up.
I just want to applaud because I say this all the time, and then sometimes people question me like, no, I should go ahead and tell them that I only know 20% of something. I'm like, you're hurting yourself before you have the first conversation. Why would you want to do that? So I definitely agree with that. Thank you.
That might be a good talking point. Maybe not something to list on a resume.
Right. Absolutely. And plus, one thing that I always say is, let's say you list 50% of JavaScript. But what if you know 100% of what the job requires? So just by listing that 50%, now you're putting yourself at a disservice because they're going to say, well, they're pretty weak in that. Maybe we shouldn't consider them for this role. That is why I always say, by doing that, you're shooting yourself in the foot for no reason.
That's definitely a practice that I would say avoid, unless you've got a lot of white space to fill up on your resume and you're looking for something to make a graph.
Right. Okay, one question I have. I know there's stats that say the average hiring manager or recruiter spends about 6 seconds on a resume before deciding whether they'll read more or they should move on to another candidate. Do you find that to be something true in this industry, or do you think it's overblown statistic?
I mean, I think it's kind of an overblown statistic because we definitely spend more than 6 seconds. But I mean, when you look at a resume, there are certain things that you're looking at, just kind of boom, boom, boom. If it's a location that you need somebody in that location, first thing, you're looking at their location. They could be your ideal candidate, but if you can't relocate them to your area, there's no point. So you just move on. But then going deeper into that, we're looking at job titles. So if you have a job title that is something that your company made up, I don't know what that means. So you want to kind of make it a basic job title. And then something that tells a story. Like I said earlier, impacted year-over-year growth by, or shortened SDLC process by, establish new relationship with customer by, and saying what you did, because anybody can write a resume that says, I'm a full stack developer, I participate in SDLC, I review requirements, I code, and I produce programs. But that's like walking into a shelf of dish soap and there's 5,000 dish soaps. You want the one that is shiny, new, best for your situation. So that's why you want to make sure that those big things like job title, responsibilities, if you're listing a section under what your technologies are, list those out. Sometimes we're searching based solely on technology names. Sometimes we might get a request that is literally 6 seconds or six words that says, find me a PHP dev. And I'm like, okay.
All right. So I have one question. I mentioned this the other day in a chat with a bunch of followers, and they've brought it back up in the chat. So one thing I've said, and I've helped many people land jobs in tech, and one thing that I always say is, networking is so vital in this industry because you never know where one conversation can lead you. I'm not known for filling out a lot of applications. I'm known for striking up a conversation that can lead me to interview one, let's say.
Right.
Do you recommend that approach, or do you recommend people spending countless time filling out applications?
I absolutely would recommend networking 1,000% over filling out applications, because an application is just that. It's a screen with some information on it. And, I can't see how your eyes light up when you talk about that project that you finished that was really difficult, but you came through and you made it with your team. That's not on an application or a resume. So I think networking and making it personal is super, super important. Thinking about it, especially with LinkedIn, think about your opportunities, but also think about the opportunities for people that you know. Because, Danny, if you find Joe a job somewhere, Joe's manager might know the president of the company you want to work for. So you never know how interconnected people are, especially in a city like Memphis, but in the IT industry just itself, it's a very connected industry.
So with that, and I'm very glad you said that, because that just helps put extra fire under me to keep going the way that I've been going. But let's say, for example, I'm interested in a role. I see that you made a post about some job that you're trying to fill, and it looks like this is for me. I don't want to just message you out of the blue saying, "Hey, Kristen, I may be a perfect fit for this job." How would you recommend someone to approach you in that setting? And what should they like? What should they be aware of? What should they be avoiding?
The biggest thing, and it's kind of like dating, biggest thing is not to come across desperate. You have to come across confident and like that you have other opportunities, even if you don't, to just kind of build that confidence level. But if you go into a conversation where you go, I'll take any job, whatever you pay me, then they have all the power. So you want to retain some of that power. But really, the way that LinkedIn is playing a role today, you can make personal connections with the recruiters. Usually, if you see a job on LinkedIn, it'll show you who posted it. A link to their profile, Kristen Moskway at such and such industries posted this job. And you can actually write a message to that recruiter. And I mean, if this is a job that you feel like is your perfect match, don't let anything stand in your way or make you feel silly. Write that message and say, hey, I'm Danny. I'm a coder from Memphis. I'm really passionate about what you guys are doing over at XYZ Corporation. Here are a couple reasons why I would be great for this job. So that, when that recruiter gets that message, they're not just going, okay, what does this person want? You're spelling it out for them. I'm interested in this job. These are the reasons why. This is why I would be a good fit. And then, of course, you it's the ball's in their court. They could be a recruiter who never responds. They could be a recruiter who already has a candidate. But you've at least put that out there. And like I just said with the networking aspect, putting that message out there, a well-written, thoughtful message to a recruiter, you never know who that recruiter knows. That recruiter may have lunch with their best friend later on that day who says, man, I need a developer. And they're going, I got this email earlier this morning, but I didn't have a spot for this guy. So it all comes back.
I'm getting so excited because this is what I say all the time. And then sometimes people are like, well, I don't know if that's true. Like, no, this is exactly what she's saying.
Really
I love
true.
this so much. Yeah. Hold on 1 second. Did the chat freeze out? Okay, we're good. I just wanted to make sure that we were still good there. We got about 30 people with us today, so that's pretty cool.
Oh, wow.
All right. Okay, so let's see this question here. So we just answered that basically. How can we approach a hiring manager or recruiter? Should I tailor my job title to match what I think the company is looking for, even if it's a small stretch?
Okay. 2 points that you brought up with that question. Tailoring your job title is a good idea because, I'll just use myself as an example. So I could be a talent acquisition specialist. I could be a recruiter. I could be a hiring manager. I could be all these different things based on my experience. But if you're looking for a recruiter, I want to put recruiter in front of you because that's the word that you've decided in your mind you want to see. So if someone is looking for, I'm just picking something out of the air, front-end developer, then you want to play to where you have used front-end development in your resume. I would really caution people about stretching their capabilities, because a lot of times you can get away with it and it's no problem and you can say whatever you want. But then there are some companies who are going to sit you down in front of a computer and say, well, do it. And when you can't, you've really just ended your own interview.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times for me, I don't ever suggest on lying on a resume, because especially with tech, I don't feel like there's really a gray area. It either is or it isn't. And what I've noticed from so many people is when they lie about something, or for example, if they say, hey, do you know about XYZ technology? And you don't want to feel like you are inadequate. So you say, yeah, sure, I know about it. Now, when they start digging in deeper, you're just digging your own grave, and it's become so deep now you can't get out of it. So
Right.
I always say, do not hesitate in saying, hey, this is something that I don't know the answer to. But if given enough time, I will research it and come back with the correct answer. I've seen that turn more negatives into a positive situation.
Yes. I mean, the biggest things that companies are looking for in anybody that they hire are trainability, adaptability, and a willingness to learn. So if you say to somebody, look, I don't know that technology, but I am interested in it and I would like to learn it. You just something, I noticed an online program I could take for it. Maybe I'll look into that. Just something to kind of, it's okay to say, no, I don't know, but you want to follow it up with something that
An
shows
action
that
item.
you're learning and you're growing.
Absolutely agree with that. One question we have, and then we'll jump into these LinkedIn profiles. It's worded in a weird way, so let's figure this out. I'm guessing beginners or finished interns LinkedIn. How should the LinkedIn profile for a beginner look? Because there's not much to mention rather than academics or a project that you've worked on.
I love this question. For people who are coming out of university or who are even coming out of high school, you have done more than you realize. I encourage everybody to keep a little notebook. It can come from the Dollar Tree. You can steal it out of your mom's junk drawer, but just a little notebook that says, this was a project that I worked on. This was my role. This was a project I worked on. This was my role throughout the year, because that way you can look back on that when you're asked something about, oh, what have your contributions been? And you can have a little cheat sheet. It's not easy to do, but I really encourage people to do it, because especially coming out of university, you're not going to have a lot of job experience. So you want to focus on projects you were involved in, special teams you worked with, how you collaborated with other departments. So able to show your teamwork, able to show your adaptability, things that you worked on that you were proud of. If it was a project that you worked on that you were super proud of, put that on there, because that's the stuff that you want them to ask you about. That's the stuff that you light up from the inside when you talk about those things. And it's impossible not to be passionate about something when someone is like that. So I would just say focus more on your soft skills, like focus more on the things that you've done with projects, any type of leadership. Anytime you have leadership, even if you led a team of 4 people, I don't care. You were a leader. Put that on there. Any kind of new technologies you're working on, what you're planning to be. I'm totally even fine with seeing someone say, I am an aspiring XYZ, because that tells me what they want to be. That takes out the where do you see yourself in 5 years? They've already answered it.
Right. One question I have that you just touched on: how important do you feel soft skills are in the workplace? Like, do you think it's a minor thing that people should work on, or is this something that people need to put a lot of emphasis on to make sure they bring it up with their technical abilities?
I think that soft skills, especially in the IT world, are super, super, super important. Just historically,
Yes.
a lot of people have seen IT as a separate entity locked away in their dark rooms with their cords and their wires and their computers. And that's not the way IT is anymore. Now,
No.
people working in IT are working through the SDLC with all types of people. They're gathering requirements from all types of people who have no idea what they're talking about. Um, so communication is a huge, huge deal, especially in IT, because in order for 20 people to make one program work, they have to work together. It's always going to be teamwork. You guys don't have the luxury of being individual islands unless you're grossly wealthy and developing your own stuff.
I look forward to having that problem eventually, but right now I'm
Yes,
still far away
yes.
from it. All right, we have two questions that just popped in. I like both of them, so I want to ask them. The first is, this should probably be a quick answer though, but how can someone ask for an update to a recruiter or a hiring manager, but not sound desperate, trying to see, hey, what's the update on the application, or what's the update on the job position? How do you suggest someone to reach out in that situation?
It's totally fine to reach out and ask for an update. Email is probably the easiest way to do that, because then you're not calling someone, putting them on the spot. You're giving them time to kind of work through their day before they answer you. So I would definitely send a follow-up email and just say, um, thank you so much for the time that you took with me. I really enjoyed speaking with you. I would look forward to being a part of your team. Please let me know when you have an update. And then every couple of weeks, maybe, if it's a long process, um, you might want to touch base again. But a lot of recruiters, if you're just touching base with them via email, no problem. They'll let you know. But if you're calling them 30 times a day, you're probably not going to get on their good side.
So that leads me to another good question, and I was asked this on Twitter, but I didn't think I was going to bring this in here. But I think you probably could answer this. There are some people that suggest that when they contact a recruiter or a hiring manager, that maybe they don't match the role or something, they get ghosted. They don't really get told like, "Hey, you're not a good fit." How do they handle that? And like, why is that a practice in the recruiting industry? Do you think that's a common practice, or do you think that's an individual basis situation?
I think it's a common practice, unfortunately, big asterisks around unfortunately, because people are just super, super busy. When you're handling a requisition load of 60 requisitions for all different kinds of positions, and you get a no back from a hiring manager, and they don't give you any information, then you try to hunt them down for the next week to ask them, okay, why? But you can't hunt them down. It's kind of a vicious cycle, and it's one of those things where we should do it, and I wish we did it more, but I think a lot of people just don't put the time into giving the proper feedback at the hiring manager level to the recruiter, other than just saying, no, I don't want him or her. Um, so that's really kind of just a sticky wicket that I don't have a great answer for. Don't take it personally. Seriously, just don't take it personally. If you want to send a follow up, send a follow up. There's never anything wrong with a well written, thoughtful note. But if someone's not getting back to you, cut your losses. They're not the company you want to work for anyway.
I agree with that. Now, here's a good question. A person whose career switched to tech, how should they make their LinkedIn profile and resume? Like, if they never worked in this industry, so obviously they don't have experience and what they're going for, but should they really give a lot of emphasis to, like, for example, we'll use me for an example. I used to work in gas stations. So should I be explaining how I used to ring up customers when it has nothing related to, being a software engineer? Or should I try to minimize that influence and talk about things that I've done in other areas?
I think this kind of goes back to those core soft skills. Like if you're going to talk about when you worked at a gas station, definitely talk about the things that you did to improve that business or to improve your customer relationships, to improve your skills. It's important to list where you have worked, sure. And then again, you never know, somebody else might have worked there and go, oh my God, I know that store.
Yeah.
So it can always work in your favor, but talk about what you've done, but talk about it from that soft skills point of view, because I sold 50,000 barrels of 30W oil is not going to matter when you are trying to get into an IT world. But customer service, teamwork, leadership, those kinds of things will still carry through.
All right. So we got one more that just popped in here. I recently graduated with a CS degree and currently work as a data analyst because of quarantine severely limited entry-level jobs in my area. But within a year or two, I want to be a software engineer. How can I keep myself looking like a competent developer when I don't code more than a few lines of SQL at my current job?
Hey, there's a guy named Danny Thompson who is awesome at hooking people up with opportunities for learning and development. His name might even be recognizable in your industry. So you might want to check with him.
The one thing I would say here, and this is a very important quotation that I give to pretty much everyone. It is very good to work at your job, be passionate at your job and things like that, but you must work on yourself more than you work at your job. Your job is getting you to do a specific task, but it is not going to take you to your specific goal. Working on yourself outside of that is where you actually make your progress. So if you want to become a software engineer, SQL is not the way that's going to happen. It's a tool that you can utilize, but you're going to need to make sure you're utilizing a lot more tools besides that, like a back-end language, front-end language, things like that. So if you want to be a competent developer but get to a software engineer position, it's definitely going to be outside of that job. And we'll do this one last question before we get to these LinkedIn profiles. Otherwise, this is about to be a 7-hour conversation. Is it okay to have a gap after the last job you left?
Yes. Especially in 2020. I want everybody to stop wondering and worrying about gaps. It is totally okay to have a gap. Just make sure that you have some sort of pre-planned explanation in case someone asks about that gap. Like, you don't want to say, you don't want to start crying and talk about something traumatic that happened, but just, hey, we had a family life emergency or a family life event and I took some time off from work. Okay. Or I was working on other things, i.e. boot camps, civic learning, things like that. Just have a general response for it without going too deep into what your personal issues were.
Now, this brings up a unique question because I had to deal with this a few months ago. I was helping somebody, and she was a stay-at-home mom for a while. How should someone, like a stay-at-home mom who's taken several years to take care of the family, let's say 10 years, has taken off of work, how do they approach the job market now? Is there an easy way for them to position themselves, or do they have to do more than the average?
There's not really an easy way for them to position themselves. I mean, just as a person, I'm sure that we all understand how hard that is to get back into the workforce after being out of it for 10 years and taking care of children. So I would really kind of focus on what you learned during that experience. I learned organization and chaos management, and you can kind of play on those things that you did during that time. I led my kids' softball team or something like that. Those type of things are okay to bring up when you have a gap.
All right, we're going to get started on this. Otherwise, we're never going to get to it. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to go over some LinkedIn profiles. So this is the first one I have. Now, when you're looking at a client's or prospective hires LinkedIn profile, what are you necessarily looking for? Like, what are the things that stand out to you? What don't stand out to you?
The very first thing that I look for on a profile is their job title. So right below Daniel Wallen and his picture, it says Internet Architect and Performance Marketer. That is super important because that's the way that we find you guys. That one little sentence. So if you put seeking opportunities, I got no clue what you're doing. If you put student, I'm not really sure what you're doing either. But if you put software developer or even aspiring software developer, that kind of lets me know what you're looking for a little bit more. So make sure that one job title line is accurate for you. Daniel's kind of sweet that he put a soft spot for shelter dogs in there. I mean, okay, not really where I would put that information, but that's not terrible.
So now with that search term, because that's something I was able to play with for a little bit. I was talking with a company and they gave me some access. So would these emojis throw anything off, or would that also be considered like unprofessional? Or would that be considered okay depending on the person?
I mean, it really is totally up to you. It doesn't offend me as a recruiter in any way to see an emoji there. To tell me he likes shelter dogs, that's, I'm fine with that. That doesn't turn me off in any way. What you're going to worry about with special characters and fonts and emojis is applicant tracking systems and submitting resumes that are applicant tracking system compliant. Because if you start using random fonts or random emojis in a resume, it's going to look like a Swahili document. Like you're never going to be able to read it.
Okay. So here in his description, let's see all the details here. Is there anything here that needs to be formulated, or is there anything that needs to be put in to help someone stand out in this section?
Not really, but the job titles, definitely focus on those because it gives you a ton of options. I think you can write your own in, but I know it gives you a drop down for lots of different ones. So fill it up. I mean, put as many options as you can until it says no more options. So for me, it'd be recruiter, talent acquisition specialist, executive recruiter, IT recruiter. I mean, I would just use every single one I could.
Okay. And so now we have his about section. Is that a section that you normally go through, the about section, or is that something people skip through, or should that be short and sweet? What is your advice there?
That's really your short and sweet. That is kind of your elevator speech. And that's something that you can tell people about too, especially people who are starting out or new to the industry or new to interviewing, is to have an elevator speech, something 20 to 30 seconds that you can say, this is me and this is what I'm looking for. So that you don't end up, spending too much time. But in the about, I mean, his is it's, he's just a cheeky guy. He likes secret sauce. That's okay. But right where he says, let me help you solve that problem, in the second to last sentence in the under the about, think about when you guys and anybody buys a product, because essentially what someone is doing when they hire you is they're buying a product, right? So you want a product that is going to help you solve whatever problem you have. That sentence, let me help you solve that problem, is probably the most important sentence on his profile. Because this is the way that he can show you how he can solve problems and how he can make your business better. why should I hire person X when I could hire person Z who is looking at my problems and wants to help me solve them, not just someone who's going to say, oh, it's the way we've always done it.
Okay. And so he has all this listed here. Now, let me ask you this. Do you think he should probably put this in a higher position besides an area that's hidden by the see more?
Now, this might be where he wants to take the dogs out of the job title and put the problem solving in the job title and save the dogs for the interests at the bottom.
Okay. That's good advice. So now what do you feel about all this?
I like the fact that he's put how many hours of coding experience. The BS in business, I can see that from another point on the screen. Strong in HTML, CSS, those technologies, that's good because like I said, sometimes we get really, really bad job descriptions that say, I need somebody with CSS and JavaScript to work for this amount of money. So we're really shooting in the dark. So if you can let us know what technologies you're strong in, those are very, very important things that we're going to be searching. Millions of people reached via social media. I would kind of be more interested to find out about those last three things, the shelter dogs and the volunteer of the month. I think those might be a little personal for LinkedIn, but again, great things to talk about. If you put that interest at the bottom, that you're interested in shelter animals or a specific shelter, then somebody could ask you about that. I get questions all the time about, oh, you're a Delta Gamma, because I have my sorority badge down at the bottom of my LinkedIn profile. I don't mention it anywhere else. They just happen to see the badge. So that's a good place to kind of put your interests and hobbies that aren't necessarily job related.
I agree with that. So as a recruiter, do you ever go through the activity portion, or is that something you skip over?
Let me tell you something very scary that I saw yesterday. I saw a recruiter colleague who rescinded an offer based on some information they saw on a LinkedIn post with racism and the Confederate flag and that kind of thing. So very, very hot in the minds of people right now is don't put anything offensive. Don't put anything that could be misconstrued. LinkedIn is not Facebook. I tell people this all the time. LinkedIn is not Facebook. It is not Instagram. This is a professional networking platform. If you wouldn't go into your office and shout about what you're getting ready to post, don't post it.
I agree. Completely agree. LinkedIn is your most professional piece of networking tools. Why would you want to cloud that or even hurt any possible job offers? I don't agree with that. Yeah. So do you normally go through activity feeds, or do you just view the first couple ones? How do you go through that?
I kind of look at what the general vibe of what they post is. Are they supportive to their community? Are they posting positive things? But the activity portion is probably what I look at the least.
Okay. And so now we're in the experience section. So Lambda is the school that he goes to. So he's placed full stack web developer in experience where that's his school. Would you advise that? Because he's not a developer there, he's learning there.
In this case, it's okay because he's not necessarily misleading anybody, because he would, in order to be completely honest, he would have to say full stack web developer student. So I like the fact that he's sort of putting his aspirational title there, but backing or right underneath it directly is Lambda School. So he's not really, I would never consider that misleading.
Okay. This is a very good question that I want to bring up real fast. Someone just asked it in the chat. Would activity posts put you off that are not related to programming or let's say their job title? Let's say, for example, esports or sports related post.
No, no. I love getting to know about people. And that's one of the greatest things about being a recruiter and interviewing people is that you find out somebody is passionate about disc golf, or you find out somebody is a passionate beader and they do intricate bead work and they show you pictures on their phone. And you, that kind of stuff is great. And those are the types of things that help me connect with a candidate to fight for that candidate if I have to, to say, no, this person is not only the best fit for the job, but they also sponsor uh, their own youth football league, something like that. That's perfectly fine. That there's no problem with that. You always want that stuff to be in the background. Like, it's okay to bring it up, but just make it in the background. Like, if you go back up to where he, above waiter. So here with Lambda School, I'm a little concerned with, he spent more time there talking about what the school was. I love the fact that he said, what is it? Because I've never heard of it. But this, I think, could be condensed down a little bit more
Do you
succinctly.
think? Because I'm agreeing with you. That's why I was I didn't want to go into this in case I discourage somebody, but I don't think number one. Do you agree with the spacing in between everything, or would you rather have it a little bit more tight instead of once I expanded it, it's taken how much of the page?
Right. I would cut it down, maybe say 2 to 3 paragraphs per job description, 3 to 4 sentences per paragraph. You really just want to cover the who, what, when, where, why. So it's nice that he's really spelling it out, especially because he doesn't have that work experience. But I think he could just kind of boil it down a little bit more to make it a little bit more easy to understand.
Want to throw this in there? Someone said thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Now, one question I had here is, and this would have been my approach, is before getting into all this detail of this, I would have probably put in this at the beginning to show what I mastered.
Yes. So you're exactly right, and it's back to that shiny bottle of dish soap. You want the main pow at the top, and then you can talk about ingredients and non-animal testing and all that stuff. But so I would talk about what he learned, what he did, what he accomplished, and then talk about what the school was. Because even when you're talking about an employer, it's usually really helpful to put a little line that says, this employer is a manufacturer of personal protective equipment for 45 countries around the world.
Should the job descriptions? I'm sorry, I thought you were finished. I apologize.
What if on your resume? So it helps a person know. So she worked for a company that does personal protective equipment. Just to give them a little snippet about what the company does, because Powers Enterprises, I don't know what they do.
Yeah. All right. So this question just came in, and should the job descriptions be paragraphs or should they be bullet points?
I think it can be a mix. Be careful to use too much of either one. Like in this instance with Daniel's profile, I would move that paragraph that Danny has highlighted up to show what he accomplished, and then I would talk about what the school required and what the goal was and what he did to graduate. Just because it's putting that information, the important information, up top at the most eye-catching level.
I agree with that. And then, so now, and the reason why I like this is because this is kind of what we discussed earlier. He's coming from an industry that has nothing to do with what he's doing now. So what do you think he should have written here? And that's less, so this is more. What do you think would have helped him in the waiter situation?
Okay, so Mr. Daniel here, we gotta take out a lot of what he says, because he's talking about found himself in a tough position, had to accept any kind of job, turned out to be not so bad. We don't want to go through all that.
I agree.
But just focusing on um, what he did to be successful at that job. Became head waiter within 6 months of being hired. Served more covers than anyone else.
Some accomplishments.
Yeah, some accomplishments. I like the thing that he says about memorizing every guest's preferences and making a habit of remembering regulars, because that's that communication piece that we're always going to be looking for throughout the work environment. If you're a good coworker and you remember your friend likes a certain cup of coffee and you bring it to them, that could be the difference in their day. Just it's the little stuff.
Personally, the way I would even word this, and Daniel, I'll throw this in for free if you want to use that, go ahead. I would say something along the lines of I'm a customer focused individual, so memorizing my guest preferences was a priority for me to excel in my field. And I think that would be a little ribbon on the package because everyone knows what a waiter is. I mean, there's not a whole lot that you can throw in there besides maybe some qualities and some things that you've done. Am I right or wrong here?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the biggest thing for him on here is that he did it for a year and 5 months. So anybody who's a waiter for a year and 5 months, we know as recruiters that was not easy. So it shows tenacity. It shows that you're willing to work.
Okay. And so now he has a section here where he was a freelance writer and ghostwriter. Of course, there's a lot of text again, but is that something he did this for 4 years? So I'm assuming he did this like in between school and waiting and things like that, right? Is his job? Yeah. Timetable is
Yeah.
about the same.
I mean, if he wants to be an internet architect, I don't think that freelance writing is going to be a big part of what he's going to be doing on a professional level. So I think this could, if he wants to include this, if it's important to him and he wants to talk about it to people during an interview process, just cut it down a little bit shorter, and maybe just keep those 2 of my 3 greatest and longest lasting clients required no sales pitch, something like that.
And one question I have is, I know many of us have had several jobs, some great, some not so great. Do you think it's necessary to list every single job that you've ever had? Or do you think it would be more pertinent and important to just list the ones that line up with what you're trying to do?
There are 2 camps, and I am of the camp that you need to list all of your pertinent experience from like the past 10 years. If you've been in the job market longer than that, I really don't care what you did more than 10 years ago. And for most people, that's about what they have. It's about 10 years of experience. I want to see everything that you've done, even if it's a tiny little 1 sentence about I volunteered somewhere for some reason. I don't know. But
Well, volunteer, yes. But
if you leave stuff off, the only thing that am concerned about is that you open yourself up to the possibility of being accused of falsifying information.
okay, that's interesting. So let's say, for example, my background, I work construction, I work gas stations, and I leave off the construction and I say I just work gas stations. Do you think in that theory, because obviously construction has nothing to do with becoming a software engineer, whereas even gas stations don't, but I have significantly more experience in that area. Do you think I'm hurting myself by leaving the construction off and focusing in on the job that I've done the most accomplishments in?
No, not necessarily. I think that in terms of talking about things that don't necessarily relate to the job, it's okay to put maybe a block in your resume that says, from 2000 to 2004, various short-term and contract opportunities in construction, gas station maintenance, etc. And then you've spoken for that time. You're not hiding anything, but you didn't elaborate on it to the point where you took up a whole bunch of space for something that wasn't relevant to your job.
Okay. All right. And so we'll go down here. He was a personal trainer and he was an office manager at the YMCA.
Okay.
And there's one more. Financial services representative.
Okay. So I think Daniel just needs some cleanup here. I love the fact that his first year out of college, he stayed there for 4 years and 4 months. That says a lot to me. That's the kind of stuff that I'm looking at when I look at a profile. That you got out of college, you found a job, you stuck with it, you learned. Okay, maybe it wasn't for you, so you went into personal training. Okay, I'm happy to see that too, that you took a chance. Here, just with Daniel in his specific instance, since he doesn't have a lot of experience, these things are necessary to be on his profile. It's just going to be a lot of that shining up to use those pow bam boom words. Right. Enrolled 500 new YMCA members during our membership drive. Spearheaded a campaign to I don't know, something with the YMCA, but those kind of action words that he can still show that he made an impact there and that he was a valuable member of that team, but that he wasn't necessarily a software developer.
Now, here's one question I have. Let's say, for example, Daniel gets a job as a developer and it's an entry-level position. So obviously, as an entry-level person, you're not going to be spearheading too many things or leading teams or things like that. So what would someone in that position write as achievements? Because for the most part, you're given very limited access to everything.
Yeah, and that's a good point. So I appreciate you kind of bringing me down a notch from those words, but even participated is a word that you can use. Collaborated, words that show that you worked with other people, that you were open to other people's ideas, developed plans for, so it shows that you were active in the process.
I like that. So let's go ahead and go down. So there's his education. Do you think, and then he has his volunteer experience for dog father, his skills and endorsements. Now, how important is this section to you?
The skills are definitely important because, again, that's a way that the algorithm is set up for us to find you. So that's another thing that I would say, go in there and fill up every single skill you can put on there. Put skills in there until it won't let you put any more. Even skills like communication, teamwork, flexibility, stuff like that. But endorsements, I don't look at them very heavily unless it's like someone from their field that I may know of. I worked in the biotechnology industry for a little while, so to see some of those names come up as endorsements was definitely a stamp of approval for that person. But in the real world, most of the time, we're not going to know your connections.
Okay, let me just answer this really fast. We've already answered this question, though. Any advice if I'm searching for a position not related to my experience? How to show my personal technical projects on LinkedIn? Well, that's not really what we answered. So if someone is searching for a position not in their experience, how can they go about that? Well, I think we've explained that you need to keep very action words in your description and highlight the things that you've achieved at your job. But how should I show my personal technical projects on LinkedIn?
So LinkedIn has a feature where you can upload videos, and not to your post, but actually to your profile. So if you list your job experience, you can upload videos under that, or within that job description.
Okay, I didn't
So
know that.
yeah, it was something that I didn't know either. And it's actually really, really, really cool for people who do a lot of graphic design work, or people who do a lot of IT work, because it's a way for you to link your profile, or to link your portfolio, or to link a project that you did, where we can actually click on it and see it. We might not understand it, but again, seeing that product with an example versus seeing that product with no example, you're probably going to want to lean more towards the one with the example.
You know why I like that you just said that? And this goes, I always say, for me, there's 4 steps to land a job in tech. The very first is you have to have a great LinkedIn profile. LinkedIn, I mean, that's your key to everything. But number 2 is you have to have a great portfolio site. Then you have to have portfolio items. Then you have to have a resume. But I always say your portfolio site, it doesn't need to be necessarily technical, but it needs to be eye-catching. And the reason why is many hiring managers and recruiters are not developers. They're not technical people.
Right.
They don't understand the code that you're writing. So, for example, Kristen, I'm assuming that you hired a lot of technical people, but you've never been a developer yourself. So you don't know the depths and the lengths of the code that these people are using. So if you make it at least look attractive, you've now attracted the attention of whatever manager or recruiter is looking at your stuff. That is why I always say, even if you need to use a template, go for it. Just make it look decent. But then when you're showing off your technical items, that's where the managers that actually know the languages, they'll be looking at what you're doing, and they're going to be digging into the code. Make those very technically savvy, but make your actual showing of items attractive to the average individual.
Absolutely. Because even if it doesn't work, if it looks good as a recruiter, I'm going to go, wow, that looks good. I don't know that it doesn't work. It's magic to me.
Yeah. We got to thank you so much, Kristen, for your valuable guidance. Thank you guys for being so nice about all this. I appreciate that. So to wrap this up, and there's this interest that or whatever. I don't think anybody really looks at that, but
I do.
You do look at interest?
Do. Yeah, I look at interest a lot. This is actually a place I wanted to tell you about. Follow companies that you're interested in here. I will look at companies and say, okay, well, they're looking at this industry and they're following their news, and I want to see that you're following my company.
Oh wow, okay, that's very interesting. I genuinely I may need to improve mine then, because I just follow the generic CEO of Microsoft and things like that. But
Right.
I never thought about that. That's actually a good point. So let's do a quick run of the mill rating on a scale of 1 to 10. What do you rate Daniel's current profile, and what do you think it could possibly be?
Without knowing Daniel, and I'm sure he's a wonderful person, I would probably give his profile like a 4.
That's where I'd put it as well, to be honest with you.
And I give him a lot of points for the personalization and not making it some dry, terrible, boring read, but just to kind of organize it a little bit more and kind of make it more snapshotty. Not, when you're talking about the 6 seconds that we're looking at your resume or your profile, we want to be able to go bing, 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 and see the things that we want to see. And
I agree with that. And just to even put the bing, 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 you need to leave the information so accessible that it's easy to get it. You don't want someone to work for your information. Deliver it to them and then let them dig more, but give them a reason to dig. One of my rules is I never introduce myself at the beginning of a conversation. And the reason for that is I've given you no reason to remember me, and I've given you no reason to remember my name. So I like to give you something within the first few minutes to show that I'm worth being here with you, and then you'll never forget me again after that. So that's why I always say leave the information wide out, because now you've given them a reason to say, well, who is Daniel? This is interesting to me. Let me find out more about this guy. But if you hide all these important things, like, for example, what you mastered at Lambda School, with it being so far down, if I don't read that whole thing, or if I don't even hit the see more option here, for example, right here, when it's see less, I don't even see what you've mastered in the school. It's so far down. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong one. The see more. Yeah, I only see the description of what Lambda School is. So if I don't even hit that and I just scroll down, now I know that you're a waiter. So I'd rather have that main pertinent information right there. But let's move on to the next one, because we spent a little bit of time on this. So Daniel is a 4, but I think we've given him a lot of information to work with. Now we have Dennis Waldemariam, and I need to connect with him, actually, but because I know him and he's a very good follower. But I need to first impressions. What do you think?
I like his picture. It's easy to see. I like the fact that he's smiling. His background picture, I think he could do a little bit better with jazzing that up or making it more aligned with what he's looking for. You guys have such amazing photos out there of the things that you do. So you could put a lot of stuff on there. But I like the fact that he puts full stack developer, software engineer, and then seeking full-time opportunity. So we'll still find him.
Search, right?
Yeah, we'll still find him.
All right. And so let's move down here. Here is his about section. What do you feel about this? Now, maybe I'm wrong. I've always felt my about needs to be very direct. I don't think you need to have an essay there, but a very short and sweet, like 15 seconds. This is what I'm about, and this is why you should love me.
Right. I mean, that really, it's your elevator speech. You know, you're trying to sell somebody in 20 seconds. So, I mean, just scanning through, I like that he's saying it combines two of my interests and goals and passions. I enjoy working in teams, collaborating, working remotely online. You know, he's hit a lot of good pieces there, but I think that he could shorten this down a little bit more into that pow bam 20 seconds and then flesh out some of it in his experience later on.
I will say I do like that he's listed out his languages here, so that way at the very least it'll pop up in a search, I would assume. But
right, exactly.
So that's perfect. Now, this is one thing I wanted to point out in Daniel's that I didn't see. There was no featured section. So how do you feel about the featured section? Is this something that you like to see, like the top few posts that he covets the most, or that explains what he's doing?
I have never consistently seen that. So that's cool. I like it.
Okay. So I would also say to Daniel, you need to go ahead and think about this. This is personally something that I work on consistently to make sure my featured section is my most attention-grabbing part of my profile.
Yeah, this is exactly what we were just talking about. Those really visually appealing, eye-catching things that even to a non-developer they'd go, wow. Those are the things that should be in your featured. Yeah.
I agree with that. So activity. Now, I'm asking this for a very specific reason. Does the amount of followers matter to you as a hiring manager? For example, if you have a candidate that has 50 people following them versus 10,000, is there a difference there for you?
No. I mean, I think that that's just really personal preference. There are a lot of people out there who are more private in their social media world, and there are some people who are just put it all out there. So it doesn't make a difference to me how many followers they have or how much they post.
Yeah, I agree with that. And one thing I will say, and the reason why I brought that up is yesterday I was asked by several people, well, I only have 20 followers. I only have 30 followers. Nobody's going to take me serious. The amount of followers does not quantify how good of a candidate you are or how great of a person you are. So don't let that number or that numeric value dictate what you can bring to the table. That, and I'm glad you said that, because that's the exact same way I feel. It doesn't matter if you have 10 or 10,000, as long as you can bring value to a company, they're going to consider you.
Right. I mean, if you're posting valuable information, I appreciate that. And if you're self-conscious about how many followers you have or how many connections you have, it's super, super easy to build connections on LinkedIn. I know you had something on your LinkedIn about your Twitter, building that up to like 30,000 people. It's
Right.
easy to do. You can increase those numbers if you really want to, if you're self-conscious about it.
So going into the experience section here, I just want to say real fast, Dennis was in the Army, so thank you for your service. I appreciate that. And so he's listed two things in his experience: his 4 years of Army experience, and that he's been a full stack developer student. Is there anything that you would tweak here or work on?
So I'm a military brat and I come from a military town, so I have to beat him up a little bit over not putting information about the healthcare specialist position, because nobody works harder than the military to
Absolutely.
collaborate, to bring things together, to make things happen, to work with other departments, to work with other countries. I mean, he, as a healthcare specialist, he's dealing with split-second problems, life and death emergencies, problem solving, critical thinking. These are all the things that he brought from that job that I really wish he would put in there.
So what would you give an example of collaborating with teams to ensure life-saving measures, or what would be
Yeah, like
something buzzword?
um, um, unit member of a 50-person team who provided care to 2.5 million wounded soldiers during this time period, by providing quick care, teamwork, collaboration, outside of the box thinking, something like that.
I agree with that.
So he's giving some concrete, we saved this many lives in this much time. But he's also talking about the soft skills.
And the other reason why I'm even like, I knew you were going to jump on this because that's where I first looked, but you were there for 4 years. You definitely did something besides just staying at Fort Snelling. Like, you've accomplished something within that time period, even if it's just making it through the 4 years. So why you would leave that blank and just not highlighting anything, I would think is really hurting yourself as opposed to helping. But
I think this is a pitfall that a lot of people in IT fall into, though. They feel like, okay, healthcare specialist doesn't apply to what I want to do.
I agree. Thank you, Go Military. I agree. All right, so now we're in his full stack developer student area. I like what he's written out here. Is there anything that you would, and then he's included his resume here as well. I don't want to open it because it's probably got personal information. But
No, I really like that. I think, the fact that he's quantified the web applications, he's quantified the times, he's quantified the technologies, collaboration, daily team meetings. I like what he's put there. He could flesh that out a little bit into what kind of studies he's doing or what he's focusing on specifically. But what he's got, I think, is fine.
all right, and then he's got his education from, I'm guessing that's a boot camp of some sorts. So he's got his certificate from the 20 weeks. It's a program that teaches individuals, and then he's got his bachelor's from St. Olaf College.
Okay.
So anything, license and certificates, volunteer experience, anything Habitat for Humanity, awesome. Anything that you would suggest here different besides what we're seeing?
No, just to touch on one thing really quickly, certifications for you guys, so huge. If you have a certification, even if it isn't certified, typing your name, put it on your LinkedIn profile, because there are times when, as a recruiter, we're limited to only candidates that have this certain certification, or only this sort of degree,
Like
or something like
comp
that.
TA or something like that. Very
Yeah,
specific
yeah.
roles. Yeah,
So,
I know exactly what you're talking about.
if
I,
you put forth the time, put it on there.
Here's my rule on certs, and I get asked about this all the time, and it's like praying. It can't hurt, right? Might as well throw it on there and just see, because no one's going to be like, oh, he's got too many certs next. I mean, it's not going to hurt. Some people will love it. Some people will not care about it. But especially if you have one from, for example, like Oracle, that is like a top tier level cert, you'd be foolish not to have that on there. But if you have a cert from like a YouTube course, I don't really think it's going to bear any weight. But at the same time, it can't hurt. Might as well. You earned it. Throw it on there. Yeah, it won't hurt you. So here's the volunteer. We got the skills and endorsements, and the accomplishments, and his interest. So anything different there that you would suggest? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
It all looks pretty decent to me. So on a scale of 1 to 10 for Dennis, where are we looking at?
I think Dennis is at a 7. I think with a little tweaking, he could really be a showstopper.
I agree. I'm going to send him a connect too, by the way, because I know he's a longtime follower and he's a great human being. So I want to support him. All right, we're going on to Zahid Khan.
Okay.
He's in India. He's an Android developer. So first impressions, what are we thinking?
There's
so this is the generic background from LinkedIn. So he has no image up there.
So that's not a turn off necessarily. I mean, it's cool to see something that someone's passionate about up there, but I like the fact that he's put what he does, where he works. He's got a professional picture.
Now, how do you feel about the photo overall?
I mean, it's fine.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, some of us are not photogenic and and take terrible pictures.
I know it's a burden being this great, my photos just come out no. But the only reason why I'm saying anything about the photo, and it's not even the photogenic aspect, it looks like he's very tired. So to me, I was maybe it's something about the eyes where it looks like he's just doing this to do it. That's why I could be overthinking it, but I don't know. Anyway, I do like the fact that he wrote where he works in his developer status there. His about section is as short and sweet as it can get.
It doesn't tell me
anything. Yeah. I would go a little bit longer instead of being so short and describing what you know or anything really. I mean, this is the same line basically.
Yeah, and this is again where we're going to be picking up search words. So, I mean, if you want to know what search words we're looking for, go to a job board and find your job description. Put those words in your profile, the ones that you see.
That's a very good point. Especially like if you're an Android developer and you search an Android job, it's going to list what technologies they're looking for. And if you know them, why not throw that in the about? I am an Android developer that knows, Android Studio, yada, 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 Kotlin, or React Native, things that people want. Anyway, but yeah, very short. His featured section is just one post.
Okay.
And we've got activities. So then, all right, we have his jobs. And there's nothing written.
Right. So I just want to know a little bit more about what he's done in those jobs, what technologies he worked with, what kind of things he developed. I mean, if he's an Android developer, that's a whole world of stuff. What did he develop? Was anything something that I've heard of? Was it popular? Was it a time saver? Was it something that changed people's lives? But I mean, he doesn't have terrible work experience.
Right. He's got the experience. He just hasn't written anything that he's done.
Yeah.
So it's not helping him in this respect.
Because again, when I search for him, only these words, Android developer, are the words that are going to come up.
Yeah. So if you even put a language that he's supposed to know, it wouldn't pop up because it's not listed.
Right.
And then we got skills and endorsements. Now, does this pop up in the search?
I think if he includes it in his skills, then it would pop up in the search. Yeah.
Okay. So he's got some skills there. Just curious. Yeah, he's listed a lot. 6 projects that he's done, accomplishments.
That's pretty cool. Why don't we know more about that?
Yeah, he needs to include that in a different area as well. I like this though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
this
it's good experience.
Kind of stuff I want to see.
Yeah. Now, just out of curiosity, because this is my curious point. Let's say you're looking for an Android developer and you stumbled on this profile and you get to about this section right here. Are you going to go further down? Or is this where you're like, all right, there's nothing described here. There's nothing here. I need to move on to another candidate.
Just because of who I am, I would look the whole way down.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I really feel like some people don't know how to showcase themselves very well. So I'm always trying to look for it. But I'm also one of those people who probably spends closer to like 20 or 30 seconds on a resume than 6. So, I mean, if you were a typical recruiter spending your 6-second glance, I probably wouldn't go much further than that.
Yeah, because already this is a good bit of scrolling and you're like, oh, well, there's nothing listed on this profile. And then you go down and then before you see this, 6 projects. So there's nothing written there unless you drop this down. Then you find out, okay, now we've got a lot going.
That would be really cool to put in his featured.
I agree. All right. So, and then after that, we have our interest. So on a scale of 1 to 10 with Zahid, where are we looking at?
Zahid's probably
be brutally honest.
Probably about a 6. I mean, he's got good experience. He's got the building blocks. He just needs to flesh it out.
Yeah, I think he's got good experience. He could definitely get a role for sure.
I would contact him if I was looking for an Android developer.
But is it based off of work experience, or is it based off of? It's based off of work experience, isn't it?
It would be based off of work experience, but it would be one of those situations where I would reach out to him with a very generic message. Like there's no information for me to tailor it. Like, oh, I see that you worked on this and this is what we're looking for with our job. Or, oh, I see that you have studied this technology and we're looking forward to making a change in our system implementation to that. Like, I can usually make a little connection between what they're doing and what we're doing, but with him, it would be very generic. He might not even be interested in what I have to say.
One thing I'm going to say to the chat, because I see we have quite a few people. If you want your LinkedIn looked at real fast, give me the link right now and I'll look at it. And we're going to open this last one, which is a point that I want to give out. It's my LinkedIn. So I would love for you to rate mine and let's go over this and see where I can fix. So this is the very first thing you land on. Obviously, as we know, City of Memphis. Pros, cons, likes, dislikes.
Danny, I love your profile because your picture is flattering. Your picture is professional. Your panoramic picture has your contact information, a picture of where you live. It really, like, I don't need really anything more than this one little 4x6 piece of information to know who you are.
Now, the interesting thing about this used to have my telephone number on it, and I used to have the company I work for here, but the internet being what it is, I started getting nonstop calls, and I would have people contact my job. So I've had to hide that information now. But other than that, there's definitely, you can at least email me or go to my old website. I've changed it now, but I don't want to list it there because of obvious reasons. So this is my about section. Now, what do you think about this?
I think that you are so much more than what you've put in your about section, and I've known you for like a week. So,
Yeah.
Experienced founder with a demonstrated history. Yeah, you're a founder, but you're also a community leader. You're a motivator. You're a teacher. You're a mentor. You are passionate about bringing up the next generation of IT professionals. You're working with groups of people who are not the typical demographic for IT.
Right.
You're bringing IT to people who wouldn't have experienced it before, and those are the things that I would say put in your about, like the
Okay.
things. Yeah, you're a founder and a software engineer, and that's great, but you do so much more as a person for your industry.
Okay. And what do you think about my featured section? I have my image from when I was a speaker at Google. I have talking when I go to prisons and talk to inmates about code, help 70 people land their job, blah, 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 blah. Then I have, 4 a.m. coding, spoke to prisoners. And that I added this silly dance one there because it got so many likes. I was like, might as well throw it up there. But,
Okay.
so do you think the section works for me? Doesn't work for me? What do you suggest?
Yeah, I think it works really well. It's,
Okay.
again, it's a professional platform, so you want to keep these things professional. The things that you've done in your professional career, you're highlighting those, and you're highlighting why you're different.
All right, and then we go through there. So my activity feed, obviously. Then we go to the experience. So software engineer. I've had to remove everything because of that situation, but
Mm-hmm.
normally there's a lot of information about what I'm doing. Then I'm officially a STEM board member for Shelby County Schools. So I assist Shelby County boards for STEM activities. Didn't I write more? I didn't write more than that. I thought I did. So I need to adjust that actually now that I think about that. Then I have my chapter founder. And the thing about that is I didn't have experience in tech. So I ended up joining groups and adding that experience here. So this is a meetup group in Memphis. And
Uh-huh.
I just started working as a meetup because I said, well, I don't have tech experience. So what can I do to make me more attractive to a tech employer? Well, I'll volunteer at a meetup. And so I started
Yeah.
volunteering. And this obviously looks great. And then I started my own group. But that was my way to kind of help. And I mean, my action points are I led the code community and organized the largest tech meetups in Memphis, assist beginner developers. So I think these are all action items that would make me stand out. Do you agree or disagree? Or is there something I can make better in this section?
The only thing that I would add in there is any kind of anything that you can quantify. Like develop business relationships to gain sponsorships for events. Did you secure $20,000 for an event? Did you secure $2 million for an event? It might not make a difference, and you might not want to put that out there, but
Right.
I mean, the size of the event or
Yeah, we had big events. The only reason why I don't want to include money for like this particular group and GDG is the main reason being people still actively give. So I don't want them to think, oh, well, they're getting enough money. Let's go ahead and stop donating or helping them out.
yeah, or I mean,
Otherwise,
yeah, even something like lead donation activities through a food drive or something,
right.
a bake sale. I don't know.
So same thing with the certs. I got a couple here from Udemy courses, but this is one question I wanted to ask, and I didn't see anybody with a ton of it, so I didn't really mention this. How do you feel about volunteer experience? If someone doesn't have any, is that something that you think they should do, or does it really matter?
No, I think that that's a completely a completely personal decision. I mean, I have some volunteer experience listed on my LinkedIn profile from organizations that I've been with for 20 some years, volunteering. But if it's important to you, put it on there. But if it's relevant, put it on there. But if it's not, then volunteer experience is never. It's not going to hurt you to have an empty volunteer experience block.
The only thing now for me, my personal belief is that if you have the ability, you should volunteer. Only because, number one, not only are you helping your local community, but you're also networking. There's other professionals that will also be volunteering. But I said number one, number two, but number three, on top of that, even if you just volunteer for a month, that's something you can leave on your resume for the next 15, 20 years. So why not spend a couple weeks at a soup kitchen, or why not do something to just help your local community? Plus, you're helping yourself at the same time. That's my personal opinion on it. Maybe I'm too, into it, and I think, okay, I want to help everybody. So maybe that's my downfall. But I don't see, and then, this here and this there. But my language is interest. So I need to start following some more companies, apparently.
Well, follow some companies that you're interested in.
I don't know what's there. There's nothing. Oh. Well, there's a couple local companies.
Just since moving to Memphis, I started following St. Jude's, International Paper, just some kind of heavy hitters from this area that I wasn't familiar with, because I wanted to see what they were doing in Memphis. FedEx, I wanted to see what they were doing in the town that I work in, or that I live in, because that's also affecting how I work and where I work.
All right. So scale of 1 to 10, what do you think about my profile?
I think you're a strong 9.
Strong 9, just like in real life. Anyway, we'll go ahead and we'll check out these two profiles from in the chat. We have Wesley Wilson. He's a back-end engineer at Diversity Inclusion Solved, Long Beach, California. Initial thoughts?
I like what I see. I like the fact that he's listed that he's a back-end engineer. Thank you, Lord. Tell us if you were front-end or back-end. That is the biggest thing you could do to help a recruiter.
Okay.
The picture is nice, but both his headshot and his photo, or his caption picture. Open to work, software engineer, web developer, full stack engineer, back-end developer, front-end developer. That's a little confusing to me, but I'm happy that he's put so many out there.
Yeah. And so highlights, we have one connection. His about section, software engineer for front-end and back-end technologies, experienced in building full-stack applications with JavaScript, Python, and PHP frameworks, and REST API and database. So he should probably expand on this a little bit.
I would, and definitely talk about how he's doing that for diversity and inclusion. I mean, he's in such a niche market there, with what the information that he's using for diversity and inclusion. Play that up, talk about it. Let somebody like me who doesn't know how IT and diversity and inclusion would ever be connected, let us know.
Okay. And so he has this featured section here. He has his resume, and then he has his portfolio. I won't open the resume because I think I already see some personal information. I'm going to scroll up a little bit. So what do you think about that? I'll ask your opinion first on the featured section. Do you think he should include his resume there, or should he include that in a different section?
There's actually a couple different places you can include your resume on LinkedIn, and it's really just personal preference where you want to put it. It's going to pop up in like one of 4 places. So as long as it's on there, it doesn't matter where it is. In your featured, I think there's better things you could put in your featured, especially with what he's doing. I mean, it sounds like there's some really cool stuff going on.
Yeah, I agree with that. And personally, and I've said this time and time again, your featured is something that you have as a tool to grab somebody right away. So if
Right.
you could grab somebody, why not have something colorful there as opposed to something very plain white and a resume? I mean, they're going to get the whole gist of what the resume is just by going through your profile anyway. You don't need to take up that very valuable real estate with a resume.
Right.
That's just my opinion.
Right.
Then we have activity and followers. One thing I will say on the follower aspect, followers don't really matter. But I will say the more you have, the more connections and opportunities you may find yourself around. It
Sure.
can't hurt to meet a few more people and add that to that. So that may be something you can consider as well, but nothing wrong here. I love the icon, by the way. But so here's his experience of diversity software engineer, or backend software engineer for diversity. He's been there 7 months. I think this looks great to me. What do you think?
Yeah, this is great. See, I'm seeing the words that I want to see: developed, communicated, built, implemented.
I agree. And so then the next job, he was a full stack engineering student for a year. And then he has the things that he worked on built. He has his portfolio right there, which is great. Then
I
he
like the
has, I agree. I wish more people, when you're trying to show this as like something that you accomplished at this place, have that there, because you could just click on it and visually see your accomplishments. I think you're helping yourself in that situation as opposed to hindering yourself. And then he was a bartender, but he's listed nothing there. Do you think that's smart, or do you think maybe he needs to add some job description there?
I really think in his instance that's fine just to leave it as blank.
Okay. Then he has his education, his skills and endorsements, and recommendation that he received, and his interest. All right. Overall thoughts about Wesley?
I think Wesley is doing a good job. Wesley is somebody that I would definitely reach out to. I just think that he needs to spice up his resume a little bit more because of, he's not working in wastewater management. He's working in diversity and inclusion. Like, it's one of the
Right.
hottest topics of today. So he could really play that up a little bit more with what he's doing.
And I would just throw in Wesley, because I do love this picture. Just maybe take a little tip out of my notebook and just add your information here at the top. And if you just add that right there at the top, you've got your perfect little snapshot of what someone can reach out to you for. Just because of the way you flow, that's the only reason why I suggest that. I don't normally suggest it, but I think it works perfectly with a city skyline kind of photo. But
let me piggyback on that real quick, Danny.
Okay.
It is really, really, really hard to share a LinkedIn profile. Like, if I have a hiring manager and I say, wow, I found Wesley Wilson today for your backend developer position. His profile looks great. I'll send it to you. There really isn't a way to do that where it doesn't all get broken up and crazy looking. So what a lot of us end up doing is we print that first page. So if you put your contact number and your email address like you have on your opening picture, then we have that first page with your contact information right there. Boom. And I can hand it to a hiring manager and say, check out this profile.
I didn't know that, and that's incredible information to have, actually. So basically, if we were printing out the first page, you want all the vital information there.
Well, I mean, really just like contact information, education, that kind of thing.
Right.
Like, your profile can be as long as you want it to. I'm not saying that it has to be short,
Right.
but really just so that we don't forget somebody's name, I'll print out that first sheet, that first page, and I'll hand Wesley's page to the hiring manager.
All right. On a scale of 1 to 10, what do we rate Wesley's profile at?
I'm going to give Wesley an 8. I think Wesley
so too.
just needs to kind of build up a little bit more and really dig into the things that he's doing that are awesome and tell us why.
Yeah. And Wesley, he thanks us for all the feedback. All right. And so we've got this last profile here for no Osorio. He's a mobile engineer from Puebla. This is the opening. What do you think about this?
I mean, it's okay. I don't get a lot from his picture, his panoramic picture, but open to work, mobile engineer. I don't know what that means. Web developer, software engineer, mobile application developer, and application developer roles. So that's super broad.
I agree. One thing I would say, no, you have mobile developer here and mobile engineer here. Figure out the title that you want to go with and use both in both places. But I would kind of expand that a little to say what you're specializing in. For example,
Yeah,
if I just say I'm a developer, that doesn't mean whether I work front end, back end, if I work in React. Like there needs to be a little bit more clarification to help you out here. But that's
like when
just
I
my
say
opinion.
mobile engineer, I think that he climbs cell phone towers for T-Mobile.
I agree.
I don't know what he does.
Yeah. So no, let's get a little bit more clarity there. But I get where you're coming from. You're open to relocation. It showed. Here's your featured section and your about. The about is very short.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe expand on the about. That seems to be a recurring theme with many people.
Yeah,
So let's go ahead there.
about really should just be why me. That's
Yeah.
what it should change the title to.
All right. And the featured section, you need it's a text post. Hi there, I'm a mobile engineer that is looking for remote work. If you need a mobile engineer that builds awesome apps on Flutter, then contact him, obviously. What do you think about that? Do you think that's a post that he should have there? Or should he work on something else?
I would really love to see more of the work that he's done in the featured section. The hashtags I don't think are
This
necessary,
doesn't work here.
or
No.
they don't work with the LinkedIn platform in this case. So I'm not sure if they're necessary. But yeah, just to clean
I
up featured.
I definitely for you can, if you have one more profile you want to include, go ahead and include it, and we'll review one last one. But we got to end this up real quick. But for here, my advice would be to post a couple screenshots of something that you've done. But also, I would say in a regular post on LinkedIn, hashtags in the textual area, break it up. Do not do this. It looks like you're attempting to go for views as opposed to writing something, so it does not come off as genuine. Don't do this. No. If you want to add hashtags, and I do this in several of my posts, and I'll show you. I'll just open up one to show what I mean. Here you go. You'll have this, and then you add a couple hashtags at the end. At least you're not breaking up the flow of the post. So what you're doing here is breaking it up. It doesn't keep the reader interested. So I would advise against this. So now we have our experience section, where his freelance mobile engineer has no details. Previous job for 1 year, 7 months has a couple details. What do you think about this?
Especially freelance, because that's such a cool word. That could mean anything. I want to know what type of companies he's working for, what type of projects he's working on. Is he looking to make some sort of change in the world, or is he looking to simplify an app on your phone? I want to know what he's working on as far as freelance, because that's a huge, all-encompassing word. That's also a place where he could play up his soft skills. For mobile application developer, he's kind of lost me, and this is where you guys will lose recruiters a lot. So worked on mobile apps using Flutter, doing front end and business logic. I kind of understand that. Back end with Node and Firebase. No idea what that means. Published apps, I get that. Project leader, I get that. So make sure my biggest piece of advice to all of you who are watching and applying and doing anything is, don't drown us in alphabet soup. There are so many acronyms that you guys use in the IT world and so many proprietary words and things that you say where you could have a whole conversation with each other, and me as somebody standing on the outside 2 feet away would not have any idea what you said. So always remember to try to break it down to a level that is understandable for the non-IT person, because a lot of us in recruiting, we're not IT people. We literally get a paper that says, find me this. And we go, okay.
All right. And I agree. Work on that and make it more easier for a non-technical person to understand. We've got our certs, which, that's great. Skills endorsements, accomplishments, which is 5 projects. And even then, it's very minimal information. I would expand on this.
Yeah, and this might be a place where he could take those projects and put them up into his featured. Like it's an app that helps you order water to your house. That could be cool looking. I don't know.
And then interest. So overall, what do we rate No's profile at from 1 to 10?
No, I'm going to say is probably like a 4. And it really just needs some development. I think it just needs some combing and some tweaking to make it stand out.
I agree. All right. This is going to be our very last profile of the day. We have Rafael Davis Hernandez. He's in LA. He's open to work. He's a freelance web developer, open source contributor, lead instructor at Beach Coders Academy. So, initial impression, what do we think?
I love all the information that he gave. The one thing that I will say is just a personal thing is don't put a picture of yourself in sunglasses on your professional profile. I know he lives in Los Angeles. I know he's cool, but go for something that's a little bit more like of a professional headshot.
I agree. What do you think about the background?
That's fine. I mean, it looks like it's something that he's maybe created or if it's interesting to him.
All right. And so his about section. I'm a technology enthusiast and I consider myself to be creative, visionary, and problem solver by nature. I'm a web developer with experience building web applications. I specialize in JavaScript, React, and Gatsby. And here's his portfolio.
Okay. Tell me why you do it better than anybody else, Raphael. Like in your about, tell me why you and not somebody else.
I agree with that. His featured section is his certificate of completion for a 6-week program with 4 other developers. Do you think he should add some more here? Should he leave the certificate of completion off? What do you think?
The certificate of completion is fine. I think that's no problem. I think he needs to add some more stuff into his feature because, I mean, if he's a lead instructor at Beach Coders Academy, he's probably doing some really, really cool stuff with some really cool young people. So that would be a great place to showcase some of his featured stuff.
I absolutely agree. You know what's one thing I always say when you toot your own horn, sometimes it's kind of like, oh, he's bragging about himself. This is the place to do it, though. Like, don't brag. This is literally where we're saying toot it. Talk about what you do. Talk about being a lead instructor. Talk about all these things. And if you're an instructor, for sure, you're helping new people find their way into tech. That is something you can quantify, like how many people went through your program and actually landed jobs in tech. This is the area where I would be showcasing all of those accomplishments personally. That's exactly what I would do. Then we have our he has nothing is explained here for the lead instructor.
Okay, yeah, open source. Open that up, flush it out.
Yeah, that's especially this is your current job. I would want to make sure I make that stand out a little bit. Then we have open source contributions, which is fine. We have independent consulting. That's interesting. Then we have web developer for Chingu, and then he was working pest control.
Okay.
So I love that story right there. You went from almost 4 years. That's a tough job. So I applaud you for
Yeah.
that. So we go there. So that's what kills me, right? Like you've written all this stuff in all these other areas, and then you've put nothing here. So you know what you need to be writing in all these sections. Why would you leave out your current and most valuable position? But hopefully we're going to fix that today, Raphael. Then we have his Udacity, education, these certs. All these are certs. Recommendations, and then several projects that he's worked on, which is great. All right. And the interest, which we've all found out today, is pretty important. So what do we think overall for Raphael, scale of 1 to 10? What do we think about his profile? And I think we've pretty much touched on all the things that he needs to work on.
Yeah, I think Raphael's like an 8, bordering on a 9. He's right there. He's just got a couple things to polish up.
Yeah, I think it's minor things for the most part. I would fix the profile photo myself. I would fix the about section slightly, and I would put better content in your featured section, and definitely expand your job description here.
Mm-hmm.
So not the hardest thing in the world. So we've got several comments that came in that I missed. Hold on. Thank you, Kristen and Danny. I think that's no, that was the profile we did right before. Okay, this is a good one. Is it recommended to use the open to work thing that you see on these profile images? This is something new from LinkedIn. So this wasn't there not too long ago.
Yeah, that is new. I honestly don't know if it's useful yet. I keep seeing a lot of it, but I also have a recruiter license. So you can designate whether you want that open to work green circle to show up to everybody or just recruiters. I would have it only show up to recruiters if I were you. Just because it can open lots of cans of worms if your employer sees that you're open to work, or a friend, or you just don't know who. You don't want everyone in your business. So I would use that, but I would have it set to recruiters only.
I agree with that. Personally, I'll be honest, I don't like it. I think it makes it look like here's open to work. Here's open to work. Like, how many ways can I tell you, like, oh, please, I'm open to work? I feel like it's too much, but that's my honest opinion on it. I'm not a recruiter or a hiring manager, so my opinion is only worth so much in these aspects. But I feel like sometimes it's too much. And I agree. You should only be showing this to the person making the decision. There's no reason why I need to show my coworkers that I'm open to work. I feel like I shoot myself in the foot in that situation.
Right.
Raphael says awesome. And
thanks, Raphael.
Tell me why you and no other. The advice is gold. Thank you. So you're giving some golden advice, apparently. I think we will wrap it up here. And I have 2 more hours, and we will be back with what is his name? Taylor Disson. He's also a recruiter from Vaco Nashville, so he'll be with us, and we'll be doing the same thing. We're going to be doing it in 2 hours, so come back in 2 hours and check me out, and we'll do a bunch more profiles, and we'll be doing the same thing, discussing LinkedIn, and we're going to be digging to several resumes as well that I have. But Kristen, this has been beyond. Let me hide this. This has been beyond incredible. Thank you for taking your time to do this with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
You've definitely helped out a lot of people.
Get hired. That's my goal in life.
Absolutely. And if you have time in the future, I would love to do this again with you. And maybe we can even get some like mock interviews or something like that going on. We can check that out. Someone else says thanks, and someone else says this is great. And it will be the same thing as well, answering that question. See you guys later. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you. If there's anything I can ever do for you, please don't hesitate in reaching out. I'm here for you with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Ditto.
And everyone, Everyone, thank you for sitting with us. I intended for this to be 30 minutes. We're going on 2 hours, though. So I need to figure this out for later on because I can't keep doing 2-hour shows like this. But I enjoyed every second of it. And I will see you and everyone else at the next one. Thank you.
Thanks, Danny.